Today is Sunday, October 1st, and this is a bonus episode that we are releasing in honor of International Podcast Day, celebrated over the weekend. We figured we've been doing the show for 6 years now, so let's go back and talk about how the Newsworthy first got started and how far we've come. We'll also give a little behind the scenes of how we do things on a daily basis. Now, to do this, we are flipping the script a bit, and instead of me asking all the questions, one of our producers, Aaron Laviola, will be the one interviewing me, host and founder of the Newsworthy, Erica Mandy. So you ready? Let's do this.
Erica, I'm excited to welcome you to the Newsworthy for a change.
Thank you. I know I'm a little nervous that I have to be the one answering the questions. I think I like asking questions better, but no, I'm excited. I'm excited to do this.
We're going to have fun with this. So first, we all know you launched the Newsworthy on your own more than 6 years ago. How did you decide to launch this podcast? And I am very curious to know, were you still working at your TV news job when you started it?
I know. I can't believe it's been 6 years. I'm really grateful thinking about that. But I did come up with the idea when I was still working in TV news, but I didn't actually launch the Newsworthy until after I quit that job and that career path. So the reason I couldn't launch while I was still working in TV news was twofold. I mean, one, there just wasn't enough time. A lot of people who launch side hustles are able to work on their passion project or their side jobs on the weekends or when they get home from their 9 to 5 in the evenings. But with news, you can't really do that, right? Because you can't predict what the news is going to be. I couldn't batch all of the episodes over the weekend and then release them each day because I didn't know what news was going to happen. And then part of that also on the time aspect was number two is that I worked really long hours in TV news. So I actually left for my Los Angeles commute at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I wouldn't get home until midnight or 1 a.m. because I was going live, who knows where, for the 11 p.m. news somewhere in the LA Metro. And so after I went live at 11 o'clock, then I would have to go back to the station in the news van, and then I would have to get in my own car and commute home. So there just literally wasn't enough time to then work several hours a day, on a podcast and a business. So once I had the idea, I then had to decide that I was going to quit TV and take the risk and go for it. After working for over 10 years in broadcast journalism and TV news, I knew that people were feeling like news was too depressing and time-consuming and biased and overwhelming. And so I really did feel passionate about trying to solve all of those problems. So it still felt like a huge risk and something that I had to decide very explicitly that I would rather try and fail at this idea and fail very publicly because I was going to have to tell a lot of people about it if I wanted it to succeed, and to feel very embarrassed if it failed. I would rather do all of that than just not try at all.
You and your husband were newlyweds at the time, too. What did he think about the podcast idea?
Oh, my husband was so supportive. I'm very grateful for that. I'm not sure that I would have done it without all of his support. Not only, when I initially had the idea and I was kind of doing some trial runs on my own, I was getting his honest feedback about things. He works in business, so he had more of a business mindset that kind of helped guide me at the beginning. And we had to decide as a family, right, that I was going to take this big risk and not make the salary that I was making in TV news, and that it might take me some time to make that salary again, especially when I'm relying on having to build an audience. So we had to really decide together that this risk was worth taking. And so I'm very grateful for him. And there were times even in the first couple of years where I would have moments of doubt. And he was just always building me back up and reminding me that no matter what happens with it, it's not a failure, because I learned so much, especially in those beginning years, and also just the experience and the impact I was able to have even early on if it didn't last 6 years. But thankfully it did, and I'm still here.
How did you decide on the name for the podcast?
Well, it's funny because speaking of my husband, I think it's hard to remember now, which is weird, but I think he's the one that came up with it. At first, I was worried that it wasn't creative enough, but ultimately I wanted something that was really straightforward and still sounded really professional and represented what our goal was and what we were doing with the show. And I'm actually proud to say that we have the trademark now for that name, which isn't always possible. I don't know if people know about trademark law. I certainly didn't. But when you make up a name, I think something like Google, right, is easy to trademark when you have a business named Google because it is a made up word. But when you use a word that is an actual word like newsworthy, it can be harder to trademark. But we do have it for audio news, and I'm proud of the name, and I think it really tells people what the show is about and still has kind of a fun sound to it. And I do remember coming up with the tagline, Fast, Fair, Fun, on a road trip, I think. I was with my husband, my brother, and my sister-in-law, and I was spitballing ideas with them, and we landed on Fast, Fair, Fun.
And what about the format? What made you decide to keep it short and concise?
One of the reasons was simply what I was looking for that didn't exist, because I was busy working long hours. Even as a journalist who was staying up on the news, I wanted to know what the latest thing was right before walking into work. And there wasn't a lot that gave me everything I wanted to know without totally depressing me. And I knew that if I, like a news junkie, a journalist, was struggling with that, then there absolutely were other people who just couldn't keep up with it all and didn't like the format of it, of what was available. And, there were starting to be more email newsletters that had kind of more of this news roundup style. But I was like, I don't have time to sit in my email inbox all day and look at another screen. I have to get ready for work. I have to make breakfast. I have to work out. I have to do all of these things. And so that's what I loved about podcasting. You can listen while you're doing other things. And so I wanted to merge these two things of you can have this great, fun news roundup and you can listen to it. And there was absolutely nothing like that available on podcasts in that format.
Do you remember how long a single episode would take you to put together when you were doing this all by yourself? And what was your setup like? Like, were you recording in a closet?
I still do record at home. But yeah, you're right. I did literally everything myself. And I just want to make a point about that because I remember someone asking me when I first started, oh, so does your husband edit your audio for you? And I was so confused by that. Like, why would my husband know how to edit audio? He works in business and sales. I'm the broadcast journalist. And so no, I had edited audio and video in college studying broadcast journalism. And actually, I don't know if people know that until you get to the bigger cities when you're working in TV news, I did all my own camera work, writing my own scripts, editing the audio and video for every story I reported on. So actually doing everything by myself for whatever I was reporting on was nothing new. And I had a lot of background and experience doing that. However, I was also having to learn how to run a business on top of all of that. So I am very glad now that I have a team to help with all of those pieces because I was going to burn out after a couple of years of trying to do everything myself. But what I did was a lot of the business stuff during the day. And then late afternoon, early evening, I started to put together the show for the next day. And I would stay up. And I mean, it still does take us, something like 8 hours to do all the research and writing and reviewing and fact checking and all of those things. But I was just doing it by myself initially. But to answer your question about my recording setup, it's funny to think about. I made myself a recording booth that kind of sounds ridiculous now, but I made myself a recording booth from an IKEA armoire. I put acoustic foam all around it and just turned it into a recording booth. And then I was able to later upgrade to turning a corner of my home into my recording studio. And we are moving soon. And I'm excited to upgrade again to more of a professionally put together recording room, a small room that I'm going to be using. So I'm excited about that in the new house. Okay, so this has been fun so far, but we are not done yet. Next up, what and who is really involved to get the show in your podcast feeds before dawn 6 days a week? And we started with just a couple hundred listeners. How many times The Newsworthy has been downloaded now? Plus, more about our mission and the real reason I keep showing up to do this work every day. We're getting into all of that just ahead. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. You've probably heard the headlines before where there's a big fight over a celebrity's estate after they pass away. And while we may not have as many assets as famous celebrities, we all, of course, want to help secure the future for our loved ones and keep the process straightforward for them as much as possible. Especially now that I have a child, my husband and I recently decided to complete our first will, and we were pleasantly surprised how simple it was with trust and will. Each will or trust is crafted to be state-specific and customized to your needs without having to spend thousands of dollars. I also appreciate bank-level encryption, and although we did not need to use it, Trust and Will also offers live customer support through phone, chat, and email. Trust and Will has earned an overall rating of excellent with thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. No wonder hundreds of thousands of families and counting, including mine, have used their expertise. So gain peace of mind today with Trust and Will. Get 10% off plus free shipping of your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/newsworthy. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/newsworthy. And thanks to our other sponsor, Lumi. I am so excited to tell you about it because it's my favorite new deodorant. Again, it's called Lumi, and it's a uniquely formulated pH-balanced deodorant. It's aluminum-free, paraben-free, skin-safe, and clinically proven to control odor for up to 72 hours. In fact, while I mostly use it for my underarms, it is a whole-body deodorant if you want it. It's the first of its kind. So that means it's seriously safe to use anywhere on your body. Pits, feet, belly buttons, and beyond. The truth is, the deodorants that I've loved in the past just were not working for me anymore, so I needed something new. And I found it. Unlike some deodorants that try to mask odor with a fragrance, Lumi is formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. Lumi's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes that are both perfect for on the go, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a Lumi starter pack with the code NEWSWORTHY at lumideodorant.com. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit lumideodorant.com and use the code NEWSWORTHY. That's Lumi, L-U-M-E, deodorant.com with the code NEWSWORTHY. Okay, now back to our bonus episode conversation.
Let's talk about how the weekday episodes come together. Can you explain that process, including what time everyone does their work?
I do a lot of the business side during the day, and I have our executive producer, Emily, who is amazing. We knew each other from our first TV news jobs. We both went in our separate directions to big cities working in TV, and I convinced her to join us back in 2020, right before the pandemic started, actually. And she is really the person that puts the show together initially. She starts work in the evening and starts putting the show together for the next day. And then I come in a little later that night to start reviewing the show, editing anything that needs work and helping with anything else. And then together we finalize the show basically overnight while most of you are probably sleeping. And we send it off to our audio editor, Baz, who does an amazing job. And we publish the show by 4 a.m. East Coast time. Thankfully, I'm not up that late because I live on the West Coast. And so I usually stay up late over here and then go to sleep after the fact. Same with Emily, who's in the Central time zone, and our audio editor's over in Australia. So he has totally different hours. But we like to make sure that the show is ready to go for when our listeners on the East Coast wake up in the morning.
And then, of course, there are the special edition episodes, which I produce, where you interview experts and celebrities about different topics. We put those episodes together throughout the week. Sometimes interviews are done a few weeks ahead of time. Sometimes they're more last minute, depending on what's going on in the news. Erica, what made you decide to add the special edition episodes to your regular lineup?
Yes, and you do a fantastic job. You make special edition Saturday episodes possible, so thank you for your work as well.
Thank you.
You get great guests. So I wanted to start that for a couple of reasons. One is just I know that we only have so much time for each news story during our daily show, and that there were sometimes topics that would come up that I wanted to be able to explain a little bit more about. And I thought it could be beneficial to our listeners to be able to do a few deep dives. And so adding this one time each week to talk a little deeper about something that might be more nuanced or that people had additional questions about that we just didn't have time for in the daily show, I thought would be really beneficial to listeners. The second reason was honestly because I saw how other podcasts were having guests, and then those guests could go on and tell their audience about it. And I thought, well, this could also be a growth strategy. And so I thought there's 2 reasons that would benefit our listeners and the business behind it to at least give this a try. And I actually said to our listeners at the time, I want to try this. Let me know what you think about it. If you like it, we'll keep doing it. If not, no big deal. I'll stop doing it. And when you have a smaller audience, you really can just experiment and try things. And I actually started it as an extension to Thursday episodes. So it didn't have its own day. And I started noticing that the downloads on those Thursdays were higher than other days. So I thought, okay, people are liking this. I think we had some reviews and people reach out to say they enjoyed it. And so we just kept doing it. And then eventually I thought, I don't like that the Thursday episodes look so long in people's podcast app. They're confused probably because we say it's a 10-minute show. So let's go ahead and break it off and make it its own show on Saturdays.
The Newsworthy has obviously gained a lot of new listeners in the 6 years since you launched it, especially for people who are newer to the show. What do you want them to know about the podcast's mission?
Well, I would just say that there is absolutely nothing better than hearing from a listener that we've impacted their life in a positive way. It is so rewarding to know that the mission I set out with is resonating and actually is happening. I've heard things from listeners that they feel less anxiety about news, but can still be informed in conversations. I've heard from listeners who have voted for the first time because they finally can stand to listen to the news more often, and they finally can feel well-rounded within a short amount of time. In fact, just last month, I heard from someone through Instagram that both her and her mom listen and that the show really unites them, even if their political viewpoints are different, that she's finally able to make time for the news in her busy life. I've heard from parents who listen with their kids and then have conversations about the news on the way to school with their older kids, and it can really help educate their kids. It brings connection between the two of them. I've heard from people whose friends ask them, how do you always know so much about what's going on? Or how do you always have these interesting, fun facts? And they proudly tell them, because I listen to the Newsworthy. And all of those things are really why I started it and why I keep doing this. If I can help someone feel informed more than they used to, have time for news more than they used to, feel less anxiety about news, less overwhelm, less annoyance, or that news is always just biased, that's what matters to me. And we really do show up for the listeners. And I'm really honored to be part of someone's day every day and that we've created something that really helps them.
Is there anything else you want to add as you think back on the past 6 years, and what do you think might be next?
Thank you to everyone who has listened, whether you've been around for a long time or you're just starting. Thank you to everyone who's told someone else about the show, because that really does go a long way. Honestly, we have to keep growing even now in order to keep doing the show. I mean, we started with a couple hundred downloads on our first day. We've now had over 35 million downloads of the Newsworthy in 6 years. And thank you to people who have left reviews and just keep showing up to listen. Of course, a huge thank you to our insiders who offer financial support to the show. It really makes a big difference in our ability to keep doing this work. And of course, thank you to you and the rest of the Newsworthy team for all of your work every day and each week. I really couldn't do the show by myself anymore. And so I'm really grateful for all of it. And as for what's next, I want to hear from listeners about what they want to see. And I do want to do more. We just have to figure out exactly what that looks like. So stay tuned, I guess. Again, thank you so much to all of you for listening and making the Newsworthy part of your day. As I've said, this show would not be possible without your support. And speaking of, please continue to let other people know about the show. And if you want that fun conversation starter, check out our merch. Go to thenewsworthy.com/merch to see our tanks, shirts, hoodies, totes, mugs, cell phone cases, stickers, and more. And of course, a huge shout out and thank you to all of the Newsworthy insiders. I hope you all enjoyed this little bonus episode. And with that, we'll be back tomorrow, Monday, with our next regular daily news roundup. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend.